Hey everybody, day 23. Obviously everybody's still reeling in the wake of the shooting that took place in Las Vegas and continuing to hear more people that have died from that, and still not a lot of answers about why that's taking place. But every time something like this happens, I think it's important to acknowledge how our media treats the shooter, right? Like one of the first articles that TMZ put out yesterday and got circulated was on like what the hobbies were of the person who shot it up. And I think inherently everybody always wants to know more and learn more about the person that did this type of tragedy and planned it out and executed it. They want to know more. They want to hear about them. And yet, every single time it's a white assailant, a white shooter, whatever it may be, the media consistently goes and humanizes them, right? And they humanize the shooters, the bombers, whatever it may be. And that's a treatment that's really only reserved for white individuals who have done these crimes. If a person is Muslim or brown or black or whatever it may be, terrorism gets thrown out right away, right? Like, what is more terroristic? Like, according to Nevada's own definition of terrorism, of trying to, attack large groups of people with mass casualties and to try to affect, like the infrastructure of a place, right? Like, so starting mass hysteria inside of a concert meets the definition of terrorism, and yet that word is so rarely tossed out when we're talking about white terrorism. And more Americans have died post 9/11. If you look at post 9/11, from after those nearly 4,000 people lost their lives, but in the last 16 years since 9/11, white terrorism has killed more people in this country than any type of Islamic terrorism or any other type of terrorist group. And so why don't we acknowledge this more? Why don't we attribute why doesn't the media attribute the faults and psychosis and sorry, I shouldn't have said psychosis, because that's another thing, is that it's we automatically stigmatize people that are white as having mental health issues, and that further stigmatizes people who have mental health issues, and a lot of times tries to excuse the behavior. And so even as I'm doing this vlog on that, I kind of fell into using that word. And so, just try to catch yourself. Try to see when you talk like that, when you do it. So, but we do try to humanize white shooters, and we try to attribute what they're doing to mental health or being the lone wolf. Now, the lone wolf term has been used with people of different race, but it's most often applied to it. And why? Because white people want to distance themselves. White America wants to distance itself from the horrors and murder and violence that is enacted by people of our race. Yet we don't extend that same courtesy to people of different races, to people of different faiths. If a Muslim person, right, like San Bernardino, something like that, it is because there is something wrong with the Islamic faith, that they are inherently violent, they are inherently evil. If it comes to any type of shooting involving a young black man, then it's immediately about the crime in the inner cities and the lack of discipline in their culture and poor upbringing and all these different things. We attribute the negative of their race to the whole, or to their faith, to the whole group, while distancing ourselves from it. So, America should be afraid of white males. They are consistently serial killers and mass shooters and terrorists and things like that, and yet we don't talk about that. We don't acknowledge that. And so I'm not promoting that we should think that all white people necessarily are prone to violence and terrorism and things like that. I'm trying to point out the hypocrisy of what we do with people of color in these types of situations. So, be aware of the language you use. I had to catch myself on that. I'm still growing and learning and trying to make sure that I don't reinforce those types of stereotypes. So, be honest when we talk about these things, about what the issues are. We have a major issue in our country with gun violence, and it is predominantly white men that do these types of mass shootings. in those situations. And so, address that issue, address what's the fault in our nation that allows for that to take place, and stop stigmatizing other people, and attributing negative things to a whole group of people if you don't want it done to yourself. So it's a tough topic, and I'm sick of having like this discussion in our country every time there's a shooting and every time there's different things. We need to do better. We need to do better as a country. We need to do better as men. We need to do better, just better. We'll see you tomorrow.